Hello everyone, this is Bill Griffin. Welcome to the Different Take Podcast. Today I want to talk about the state and federal election laws that been bandied about in public and introduced in state legislatures and federal or in U.S. Congress. Do you remember this photo of Texas legislators? So you see they're wearing masks and without mask, and the thing that struck me about this is these are the same people that will force your children, if they have their way, they're 5 years old, to wear masks all day long in public school. So the same people that do that, but they can't get their photo taken without taking their masks off. Same people that have you wear a mask on an airplane, but not for them. So aside from that, I think it's very ironic that I'm sure these Texas Democrats, along with Democrats across the country, were overjoyed at the results of the 2022 election, in which U.S. Congress is controlled by the Democrats, and of course Joe Biden was elected. But they're complaining about at the time, this all happened during the summer, and they're complaining about the Texas legislature, which is controlled by Republicans, about the election laws that they're proposing and are about to vote on. So they take off on a plane to Washington and stay there something like 38 days. So the media reports they're leaving, but in a big way, but when they tuck their tail between their legs and go home, not much is said.
Oh, screw you guys. I'm going home. But Carmen, we're trying to... screw you guys. Home.
So they're happy with the 2020 election, in which their legislature in Texas, the people voted, according to Democrats, fair and free election. Everybody should be pleased with it. But in Texas, this Republican legislature, which was voted in by the people, the Democrats say, no, this is anti-democratic. We don't like the election law changes you propose, which is sort of, it's ironic that they don't like that election and don't respect their constituents who did not vote for them. I mean, keep in mind, they were elected by majorities in their districts, but the minorities, they certainly don't respect them because they voted for someone who presumably support these election laws. The way to, if it's so egregious, the way to fix this is to vote them out the next election. If it's so terrible, if the laws are so terrible, and they're saying, well, that can't happen because it rigged the election. Well, you're telling us that the election in 2022 will be rigged because the rules are more restrictive than 2020? I'm not following your logic. But anyhow, they stick their their head between their legs, and they come back to Texas after 38 days, according to NPR. So this is from NPR. It says, not all Democrats. This is August 19, 2021. It says, not all Democrats joined in the holdout, and the news to come back to the Texas House defended their decision, saying they had successfully pushed Congress on voting rights legislation while pointing to the growing urgency of surging COVID-19 caseloads in Texas. Well, first of all, I don't think they were successful, and Congress is probably not going to pass this HR1 bill, which I'll get to. So I don't know that they were successful at that at all, but they're also pointing to the growing urgency of surging COVID-19 caseloads in Texas when they weren't wearing masks on the airplane. I'll go a little further down to this quote. This is how Texas Democrats lose elections, end quote. State Representative Michelle Beckley tweeted. So it's not, she's ticked off at the other Democrats who saw the holdout in Washington was falling apart. So that falls apart, and they come back home, and she's ticked off about it. She's claiming that this is how they lose elections, by not sticking together. Has nothing to do with the fact that the election laws probably aren't that bad in their view. This is just political, what politicians do. But for the people that voted in the Texas legislature, if they want them out, they'll go back and vote them out if they really don't like this law that the Democrats say that the people hate. So it's basically giving the voters a middle finger. It's saying we hate democracy, not that we're supporting democracy. We actually hate it, because that's what democracy is. You're saying 2020 is fair and free. You don't accept the consequences. So the U.S. House passed HR1. The Senate hasn't voted on it. That was earlier in 2021. The House has been complaining because the Senate won't vote on it. They want the filibuster passed, so that it'll pass, the filibuster removed, which requires 60 votes, so they only have 50 votes. Doesn't look like the Senate's going to do that. This is from Esquire. It says, this is explained from the Democrats' perspective why this legislation is so important. This is a gentleman named Josh Silver, who is, but this is from Esquire on January 25th, 2021 by, the author is Jack Holmes. But at any rate, Mr. Silver is quoted as saying, regarding HR1, quote, "Like, we will continue our decline into authoritarianism. It is these problems that the bill addresses that are the root cause of the extremism and polarization that gave rise to Trump and the new sort of anti-representative form of government that the Republican Party has chosen to embrace." And I'm saying that as a truly nonpartisan guy. Really want us to believe that with that language. There's, I looked up on their website. This is from it's called represent.us. There's the first page, the home page, you see, tell your senators to fix the filibuster. So this fellow is really nonpartisan, so I'm sure he had fixed the filibuster on that web page when Donald Trump was in office, and he wanted to get his legislation through, so he was advocating get rid of the filibuster at that time. Filibuster protects the minority, requires 60 votes, causes things to go slow instead of the pendulum just shifting back and forth, and people, they can't plan anything. One side comes in and then the other side comes in and changes what that side, and it's just that it's a good thing to have, and it's been there a long time for that reason. But this fella is nonpartisan, so he wants to get rid of the filibuster. It doesn't matter who's in office. You believe that? I don't believe that. So it's amazing the contradictions that the leftists and Marxists can keep in their heads at one time. So this is from a website called Republican National Lawyers Association. So this is from the standpoint of Republicans, and also a standpoint from I don't think Democrats will dispute these 10 things that they go through. It says here are the 10 worst new federal mandates proposed by the House. And this was posted by Lisa Dixon on February 4th, 2019, the Republican National Lawyers Association. So, top 10 reasons. Automatic voter registration, using colleges and universities as agencies and registering 16 and 17-year-olds. Number 2, abolish voter ID laws and only require a signature in the polling place to vote. Number 3, online voter registration without protections to verify the eligibility of the voter. Number 4, same-day registration during early voting and on election day. Number 5, 15 days of early voting, including minimum hours and requirements for locations. Number 6, restricting election officials' efforts to maintain the accuracy of voter registration lists. Democrats may may dispute the wording of that. Number 7, automatically restoring the right of felons to vote after release from prison. Number 8, no excuse abstain mail voting with signature comparison verification available to all voters. Number 9, provisional ballots cast outside a voter's precinct must be counted. And number 10, congressional redistricting done by an independent redistricting commission micromanaged by HR1's provision. I will, to go through these, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are basically ways to loosen the way that loosen restrictions on voting, make it just a lot easier to vote, and it just sounds like you're going to have more votes than you would have citizens if you're reading that. But you're turning this over to the federal government, according to this website, are really, these are big problems. It depends on your outlook. Democrats would say, well, we're expanding inclusivity, and we're making it, everybody should have the right to vote. Well, you have that opinion. That everybody ought to vote and that voting ought to be done in public, meaning just post what your vote is. You can buy and sell your vote if you'd like, because that's what will happen here. People, like I think, voting ought to be done in secret, because then you can't be coerced or intimidated into voting a certain way. Not that anybody would do that. Not that a politician would do that. But from a Republican perspective, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. If ballot harvesting, which is basically collecting ballots, and a third party collects ballots and puts them in the ballot box, if that's illegal for Democrats, it's legal for Republicans. We go down the rest of these reasons. Number 6, what is actually happening with the language in this law, if it were to actually pass, is that election officials would maintain the accuracy of the voting. There would be federal oversight, so depending on who is in power at the time would determine the accuracy of these registration lists. So if Republicans are in power and Congress, then the accuracy is going to be, the voter registration list would ostensibly be much different under them than it would be under a Democrat. The other thing that is really a problem, I think, is number 10. Congressional redistricting would be micromanaged by the federal government. So that is a big problem, because voting laws never protect. They protect the incumbent. They are not anti-incumbent laws. Which gets me to the next thing that I want to talk about. So this is from a Newsweek article, January 10, 2022, from Newsweek. The headline is, Fact Check, Will HR1 Give Taxpayer Money to Federal Campaigns? Is written by Mary Ellen Cagnesola. Pardon me, this was written on March 3rd, 2021. In this article, this column says, HR1 seeks to change that by, and she's referring to the money in politics, or actually she's saying that that this will change, HR1 will seek to change that challengers are prohibited from running because they can't raise money. That's what she's basically saying. It's anti-incumbent. She actually is promoting this as an anti-incumbent measure. HR1 is anti-incumbent. Politicians don't write anti-incumbent legislation ever. But it says in this article, HR1 seeks to change that anti-incumbent legislation, pro-incumbent legislation, by making it anti-incumbent. Sorry, it took me a while to work through that. By establishing a public financing system for those races in the hopes of giving more average Americans a more even playing field. According to the text of the bill seeks to fund a 6-to-1 small donation matching program exclusively through the Freedom from Influence Fund, which, unlike funding that has been used for presidential campaigns for decades, is not necessarily taken directly from everyday taxpayers. So What she's saying here is that there will be a donation. In this article, she's saying there's a donation you can donate or not to this fund up to $200, and the federal government will use it as it sees fit. How the money is distributed and who gets it. There's going to be all kind of rules on who gets this money and how you run for office, and you got forms to fill out, and that's the federal government. It's going to be they'll clog this down, but she claims it will give average Americans a more even playing field. You might remember John McCain when he ran for office. I think it was 2008. The liberal media were just enthralled with his mantra that there's too much money in politics. There's too much money in politics, and he did his rounds on the leftist media outlets. People bought into that, but the money now, the Democrats are raising money, and they were raising money then. It was equally. The big money was going to both parties, but Democrats like to point that they'll claim that Republicans are raising the money when it's people that they get money from that they don't like. But the truth of the matter is that they're raising a lot of money from all kinds of sources. This is a way to game the system. But in this Newsweek article, she actually has the temerity to claim that a tweet by a Republican congressman, Representative Mark Walker, Republican from North Carolina, he tweets, "Tired of seeing campaign ads? Well, if enacted, HR1 will take your money and give it to politicians so they can run TV ads." Well, in this article by Mary Ellen Cagnasola, she says HR1 seeks to change by establishing a public financing system for those races. So it goes down later in the article and says that Mr. Walker, this is one of those fact-checked articles. She's checking the facts. So at the conclusion of this is that his claim is the ruling. Isn't that something? If you got to call it the ruling, you're probably not ruling on anything. Mostly false, because it's not taking money from a broad pool of tax dollars. Now, it's just taking money from people that will check the box on their return. Don't check those boxes. Don't give the federal government any more money than is required. That's my opinion. Believe what you want. You go the left wing or leftist, the Marxist, want to make it really easy to vote, so there's lots of votes and they can manufacture votes. And as I said, be careful what you wish for. The sanctity of the secret ballot. You know, I haven't heard that phrase. Nobody talks about that phrase. No politician says that anymore, because what's going to happen is that voting will not be done in secret. As time goes along, this idea will just with each election cycle, I predict that it will erode. I could be wrong. Maybe people just love this idea, but there's a reason that people vote in secret is because there's a lot of violence, and it started back in the mid 1800s, if I'm not mistaken, in Australia, and then it spread to the UK and in the US. And the concept of voting in secret was branded as the idea was talked of as cowardly. You know, you should vote in public. Everybody should know how you voted. A lot of people that would vote, presumably, I mean, it's common sense that they would vote differently or not at all if the vote were anonymous, confidential, secret, than they would otherwise. And I've talked about that before. But I think it's ironic these Texas Democrats went to Washington under the guise of promoting democracy when they actually hate democracy or are agnostic to it. And then the HR1 is intended to loosen the rules and the federal government run things, which is a pro-incumbent, pro-Washington move if you've ever seen one. So you think what you want, that's what I think. I really appreciate your listening to this, and please check out, you've been listening to Different Take Podcast, please check our website, the platforms we're on, and please let me know if you have any comments about this. Thank you.